What's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody? That's right. The Boxing Source here checking in for Sunday, August 4th, 2024. And this is the Boxing Source podcast. Yeah, we got a whole lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about here in this particular podcast as we are reacting to all of the activity that happened yesterday as you had Terence Crawford facing Israil Madrimov for the WBA and the WBO interim super welterweight titles. They're at BMO Stadium in Los Angeles. And, we've had, some reactions to what was going on there in that particular bout and all the things as far as like the fallout afterwards, the result and everything like that. So, of course, we're going to be breaking that down here on this episode of the Boxing Source podcast. Shout out to all of those listening live on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Twitch. Yeah, that's right. We're on Rumble and we're also on Twitch as well. And after this show is done, I'll have another announcement in reference to the Boxing Source podcast. As I had to do a few things here for maintenance purposes and building purposes for the Boxing Source. So there's definitely something good here for people to enjoy this particular podcast, right? But let's get into it. Of course, you had this main event. Two undefeated fighters now in the super welterweight division. You had Israil Madrimov in there with a record of what it was, like 10 wins, 0 losses, and 1 draw. With that lone draw to Israil Madrimov, to Michelle Soro, technical draw, clash heads. The thing kind of, went, didn't even, the fight didn't last long or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it was a technical draw. So that was like the lone fight that wasn't a win for Israil Madrimov, making his first defense of the WBA super welterweight title against Terence Crawford, of course, the WBO lightweight, the undisputed super lightweight, the undisputed super welterweight champion, right? Welterweight champion. In his first fight at 154 pounds, going up against Israil Madrimov. And, there are a number of people that, kind of like expected a few things here from Terence Crawford. Him being, highly rated in the pound for pound rankings. Some, put him at number 1. Boxing Source had him at number 3, mainly because, this was his first fight of the year. You know what I'm saying? So, with that being said, there were expectations that Terence Crawford would go in here, get the win, and was likely to get a stoppage win over Israil Madrimov. I had, a preview pretty much last week going into it. And also, talked about the odds, the betting odds there, pretty much hours before the fight took place that, really leaned towards Terence Crawford getting the win there. And, I think it was like after our first couple of rounds, it had him at like what, minus 800. You know what I'm saying? So the thing about it is, kind of like I was looking to see if Terence Crawford was going to, be the Terence Crawford that, he's been in the past few fights, leading into his stoppage victories, as far as like, him using his intangibles, using his reach to, kind of like get the better of Israil Madrimov and, work off of that and then, take advantage of that and then eventually, get a stoppage victory there. But, we've seen, what was happening there in those first few rounds where it was, some would say it was like a staring match, but it was, some could also say it was like a chess match, and I lean towards a chess match in this. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Brother Matt Gomez here live on this thing here. But let's see, it says what? Terence will get beat by Jamel because after Canelo, all junior middleweight punches will only tickle Jamel. I'll get into that in a little bit. That's going to be something there. But yeah, back into, those first few rounds that we saw with Israil Madrimov and Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford was, just sitting in there, waiting to see what Israil Madrimov was going to do. And Madrimov, I guess to his credit, didn't necessarily fall into the trap, so to speak, there of Terence Crawford, because Terence Crawford, being a sharp counterpuncher, having his things there where he makes his opponents pay, given his, reach advantage and, being in control of the distance, that he was waiting to see if Israil Madrimov was going to, commit, and then he will react off of that. You know what I'm saying? And shout out my guy Trill Clinton. He says going up and coming back down ain't easy. Pause if needed. What's up, Trill? What's going on with you, Trill? But yeah, it was like Madrimov was, doing a whole lot of movement, moving in up and down, side to side, and fading in and out, as far as like foot movement was concerned when it came to being linear, not necessarily like side to side, but linear. So it was like Terence Crawford was waiting to get the timing down to see, okay, when is Madrimov going to commit with a punch, so I'd be able to, counter off of that. And in the first round, you really didn't see that many punches at all out there from Israil Madrimov for, Terence Crawford to go ahead and react to it, right? So pretty much like at the end of the first round or something like that, you just seen Terence Crawford throw some punches to, kind of be the aggressor, so that he'd be like, you know what? Oh, he ain't gonna, come, go forward. Basically, I'm gonna just, throw punches and see if I could land in a couple of times to, score points. And so that's kind of like was the summary of, I would say the first few rounds. Chess match, seeing if, the fighter will commit. And if the fighter commits, just, make a miss and make a pay. But you really didn't see either one of these fighters, kind of like either take a risk or, put themselves out there in order for the opponent to make them pay. Right. So as you've seen there with the live crowd, they weren't necessarily all feeling in all that. And, they kind of like were a little bit antsy, going in, after those first few rounds. But, it was very strategic. I felt like Israil Madrimov was strategic in that particular sense, that he didn't want to really waste anything as far as like punches. He didn't want to overcommit. He wanted to make sure that he got, all that he could with whatever he was going to use for his offense. And at times, particularly, 4 rounds 5 or something like that, he landed some good, good punches on Terence Crawford, particularly with Terence Crawford being in a southpaw stance. He had like his left hand down. He's just waiting to see what was going to happen with Israil Madrimov. And, when Madrimov was kind of like on the offense, whether he was like in range or something like that, given his movement, it wasn't like, Terence could like really commit to a punch first. So he was almost like still in that stance of being used to, okay, I'm waiting. And then, Israil Madrimov just kind of like did foot feints and faked him out a little bit. So he was able to land, some, right hand leads or, a couple of shots to the body or that type of thing in order to, try to get a little bit off of Terence Crawford. But Crawford, with his activity, he was scoring with the punches that he was throwing there too. And he was starting to go to the body as well of Israil Madrimov, which, I thought would it kind of like led to, a little bit more there from Terence Crawford. But like I said, with it being like a strategic battle, he just wouldn't overcommit until the tail end of the fight, and props to Madrimov, because he was able to, try to take the lead in round 7 or 8. And there were times out there where Terence Crawford would kind of like, throw combinations and stuff like that. But when he was doing that, Madrimov would try to get him right back. You know what I'm saying? So, props to Madrimov on doing that to like kind of like not have the momentum completely in Terence Crawford's favor, but there wasn't much from Madrimov to kind of like say, hey, we're doing enough here at this particular point to get back, basically into it. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of like said, if you were like a fan of like action and all that type of stuff, maybe those first few, 5-6 rounds weren't necessarily, all too hot for you. But from a strategic standpoint, it was just something where you just said, hey, either I'm going to wait for him to commit, or I'm going to just try to do something to see what he'll do. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Juice in the building. He says, yeah, four-time division world champ. There. Who's next? I'll answer that in a bit. And we'll have one of our panelists come up here in a little bit. Here, got something going on right now, so I'll get him in about 5 to 10 minutes. All right, so yeah, that you had the thing there in the middle rounds as far as like back and forth. No fighter really getting the momentum to have another fighter in real trouble. Like there were some punches that landed that kind of buzzed Terence Crawford a little bit, and there were some punches that buzzed Israil Madrimov a little bit. But it was like nothing to really have either fighter in serious trouble. So whether it was like in rounds 8 or 9 or rounds 10 or 11, at least in rounds 8 and 9, you kind of like seen Madrimov be more effective in his punches, being able to land through the guard of Terence Crawford, throw right hands around the guard of Terence Crawford, and that type of stuff. So he was able to, build a lead as far as like or scoring is concerned with those middle rounds or something like that, to at least try to get back into it, according to some. And then with Terence Crawford, it was like rounds 9 and 10, and then those last 2 rounds where you saw Terence Crawford like be a little bit more aggressive and push the action a little bit more to see what Israil Madrimov would do. But props to Madrimov, he didn't necessarily back down, or he wasn't necessarily in that much trouble in those particular rounds. It was just that Crawford did enough in those rounds to win them. And so when it went through those full 12 rounds and you had the scorecards, at least before the scorecards were read, I pretty much said, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if you had it like 8 rounds to 4 in favor of Terence Crawford in 1 or 2 of those scorecards. And what did we see? We saw one judge had it 116-112 in favor of Terence Crawford. 2 judges had it 115-113 in favor of Terence Crawford. For him to have the win and be able to win that WBA and WBO interim super welterweight titles. But like if you break down those scores, 1 score of 8 rounds to 4, 2 scores of 7 rounds to 5 in favor of Terence Crawford. So it was fairly close there when it came to the scorecards. And some were saying like, hey, a lot of those rounds were fairly close to score, and that it could have been something where it could have went either way. I think with those last 2 rounds, though, Terence Crawford, I think, kind of like took those last 2 rounds, and with him doing that, he basically, won the fight. You know what I'm saying? I think, like say, for example, if he like swept those last 2 rounds in the judges' scorecards, then he pretty much like took it on 2 scorecards and, was pretty much like, went way ahead in 1 scorecard. So like, for example, if it was in the 10th round and you had those scorecards, like say, for example, you would have had 6 rounds to 4 on 1 scorecard. And, for the other 2, you would have had it like 5 rounds to 5. So those last 2 rounds, those championship rounds, the fight was basically in the balance. You know what I'm saying? So that's how it was at. So that's why I kind of like say, in the main questions here, was Terence Crawford impressive in this performance, or did Israil Madrimov blow it? Now, for me, I kind of say that for Madrimov, he had a shot. He had a shot to, get the upset here. He had the shot to get the upset here because, with Terence Crawford being a little bit tentative, but also, kind of like approaching this fight and having the majority of this fight in a counterpunch stance, you want to be, effective and efficient in trying to go after Terence Crawford. But all the movement, the herky-jerky style, and, almost being like who was it, like Joe Frazier or something, moving the head, bobbing the head and that type of stuff, but not even punching. I think those first few rounds, he could have done something in order to, try to get a couple of them early. And then if you had the same, instances or the same results that we saw in the tail end of the fight, then maybe you would have it 7-5 in favor of Israil Madrimov or 8-4 in favor of Israil Madrimov. We'll see. All right. Seems like my first, panelist here is ready to go. Here to chop it up about this fight. He's, of course, out there in the ATL area. Is my guy, the Boxing Academic. What's going on, Boxing Academic?
Not too much. How you doing, JR?
Man, I'm all good, man. Just reacting to what happened, man. I think it was basically a fight of whatever you preferred in some of these rounds. Some people say that it was hard to score those rounds, but it was me, whoever had the most aggression towards in those rounds, kind of like baked those rounds. And I leaned it towards Terence Crawford because I just felt like Madrimov, even with all that herky-jerky movement, he just didn't throw that many punches over the course of those early rounds.
So the last statement that you made, in a nutshell, is my sentiment. And it is unfortunate that the loudest voices, which are the announcers, sort of shapes the theme. It shapes the people's purview of the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean Porter was like, "Nah, y'all tripping," but he didn't want to say that. He wanted to say it as polite. He pulled a you. He pulled a you. You can tell somebody they wrong without telling them that they're a dumbass or something like that. You do that very well. See how I'm complimenting you? You bring people back even when they wrong.
Yeah, bring them down to earth without kind of like flat out blasting them off rip.
You let them down softly.
Yeah.
And so, which is a good trait, by the way, which is a very good trait, and it allows you to move in spaces and always be in spaces, whereas a different personality, like let's say Donald Trump or something, like he gonna get ostracized because he can't move softly. But
now look, listen. Now I Kamala, I don't like Kamala. I don't know who she is. One thing, she says she's this, and now she's that. I don't get it. No, I'm just playing.
He is funny. He is pretty funny. That's one thing. But so Sean Porter said exactly what I was feeling, like at least in the first half of the fight. And my scorecard, people are going to be like, people based upon how the announcers sort of spoke about the fight and the theme of the fight, how people are viewing the fight. People are going to be like, what is Michael talking about? What is the Boxing Academic talking about? But what the Boxing Academic is talking about is watching boxing for boxing. And it was a great chess match. Madrimov was a very skilled, high-level opponent, and he made Terence Bud Crawford raise his level to an even higher level. People talk about that fight. It's a travesty that they started this fight after 1 a.m.
Oh my goodness.
They should be ashamed of themselves.
But I expected that to happen. This is Riyadh season. I expected that to happen, but goodness,
I love Eminem, but who asked for that at 12 a.m.?
I'm telling you, man. Hey,
why 12?
With the Riyadh season stuff here and how long these events are, man. Warn folks.
Yeah. So great opponent, highly skilled person. While the fight was very competitive, it was not as close as people are making it out to be. The 8-4 scorecard is what I scored it. And it could one round I didn't really I saw, but I didn't I stopped the 12th round. I didn't really look at it with the same zeal that I looked at other rounds, because at that point to me it was over.
It was over. I feel you.
And so we as boxing fans, we can sometimes penalize fighters for what we are used to seeing them do. We are so used to Terence Bud Crawford knocking people out, doing it in such a emphatic fashion that we penalize him, and just we're so used to him doing that when we don't see him do that, we demerit him. Just because he didn't get the KO doesn't mean that he wasn't winning, getting the better out of those exchanges. Because if you look at every round for the round, don't look at whatever, don't listen to the announcers, and you look at the rounds, most of them at least, he was getting the better exchanges. Even the times where Madrimov would hit him, Terence Crawford would always answer back and negate it and land one more punch. Some rounds, yeah, they didn't have a lot of action, but he was getting the better of those exchanges. Again, Madrimov is a world-class fighter who pushed Bud, but Bud is the man. This thing showed me that Bud just need a dance partner, and he will raise his level. Like, the look in his eye was Floyd-esque. You know how Floyd be so locked in and his eyes just be like a tiger, like focused. He able to see this, he able to see that. It's beautiful to watch, man. Like it's beautiful. It was a competitive chess match, but it was a relatively straightforward boxing match for Bud. He won most of the rounds. The announcers were disappointing because of their blatant bias for Madrimov. And the bias is rooted from the same bias that you get for Lomachenko. I can't say this for Usyk because Usyk deserves the bias that he gets. Lomachenko deserves it too, but Usyk has earned his bias. Usyk has earned the right for people to be biased toward him. I can't say that same thing for Lomachenko. Lomachenko is a great fighter, but the fact of all that posturing, they were just completely biased toward that. And Sean Porter was like, nah, y'all, he wanted to be like, y'all tripping.
Yeah.
And so on the scorecards, I think the judges gave Madrimov all of the competitively close rounds. During the fight, Madrimov was doing a lot of feinting. He was doing a lot of, lowering his level to try to act like he gonna throw, posturing. And to me, what I saw was that he was a little less confident to actually lead with blatant offense because he had a fear of being countered by Bud.
Yeah.
Bud was locked in, and Bud had the same problem. Bud was countering. Bud was leading the action, and when he would hit him in the stomach and then he would get out, Bud was parrying so many shots. What a dude would throw shots, he was parrying shots, and then he would hit him, and it just wouldn't look like these eye-popping shots that we so used to Bud hitting people with.
Yeah.
Madrimov got a very good IQ.
There's some key on that. But yeah, go ahead and continue.
Madrimov got a very good IQ. He has very good patience, and that allowed him to make it look like a fight and make it look so much different than what we used to seeing Bud in the ring with people. And he displayed this IQ and the patience with his feinting. And if you're going to have a tactical match that's at 1 a.m., this is the kind of match that you want. I'm not trying to bring Shakur Stevenson in this, but you can see the difference between someone who was giving ground and parrying and countering. You can see the difference in how Bud does it, which leads to, even though it wasn't fireworks offense, he still was winning a lot of those exchanges, and he was landing more punches. And if he wasn't landing punches, how did the guy's eye end up looking like that after like round 3?
Yeah, it had like a little bruise.
Yeah. How did his eye end up looking like that? But if you're going to have a tactical match at 12 a.m., this is how it should be. Crawford raises level, and this makes me enjoy his skill set even more. This is my scorecard, and I'm gonna end it after this. Round 1, 10-9 for Bud. Mm-hmm. It's a fill-out round, but Bud won it with a few counters. Otherwise, no one landed anything of significance. Round 2, Bud. Madrimov landed 2 or 3 power punches, but Crawford landed more power punches and more shots in general. He was just leading the action and landing more, even after Madrimov would get off. Mm-hmm. Round 3. 10-9 Bud. Bud led with offense. Madrimov still feigning and not committing. Bud parried a lot of his shots. He countered. He landed a few more shots. And the timing and the cadence of Madrimov, the same dancing that Lomachenko does, like Madrimov was doing that same little dancing, you know, that little, I'm gonna call it a dance because it's artistic in its form of how they get in and out. It's a dance. And he had the timing of that, and then he started disrupting that rhythm, which means Madrimov had to like hit him in the stomach, and even when he hit him in the face, the shots wasn't clean. It wasn't like he landed a few clean shots, but most of the shots that he landed on Bud's face were not like knocking his head back. They were just barely
as of yet. Yeah, by round 3, not as of yet. No.
Yeah. At some point, you're right, he did, but they was barely hitting him. Yeah, okay, you're right. This is round 3, and then the announcers were biased. Comp your box is full of shit. Whatever they call it, whatever their version of comp your box is full of shit. Like whoever clicking them things and all 3 of them got to click them within a millisecond. Like they're telling me that Madrimov threw more and they landed the same amount of punches. And Madrimov wasn't even throwing punches. Like what? Round 4. I scored a 10-10, but I was leaning toward Madrimov. Madrimov did more, but not enough to truly separate himself from what Bud did. He fought more animated that round, and he will probably get the round because he fought more animated. Round 5, 10-9 Bud. Bud doing more in the beginning, and he landing his other punches he landed are canceling out what Madrimov are doing. Every time he would throw something, he would be canceling out what Madrimov would do. Round 6, 10-9 Bud. Madrimov posturing and feinting, but Bud is landing and throwing more. In all these exchanges, Madrimov is trying to do something. He may land a couple punches here and there, but Bud is equaling out those, and then he's landing more impactful shots. And at some point, he started low. I ain't gonna say he was loading up because he wasn't loading up, but he was throwing harder shots on the dance beat where Madrimov couldn't throw. When Madrimov was on his back foot beat before he could come back on his front foot and throw punches, Bud would hit him with like bang, 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 body shot. And then he would hit him with a hook. And, you know, like he would be landing those shots. Round 7, 10-9 Bud. Comp your boxes bias. Chris Maddox. I had other words, but, you know, I'm trying to be nice.
Go ahead.
Full of shit.
Listen. Hey, if I could openly criticize who was the dude that made that report the other day? Like they made a report in reference to Shakur Stevenson and who is it? William Zepeda, and pretty much like, you know, Oscar kind of like dismissed that whole thing or something like that. So if I could call out other journalists, man, you could call out journalists here on the Boxing Source, man.
Okay. Round 8, I still scored it a 10-10, but I'm leaning toward Madrimov. Like all the rounds that wasn't round 9, which Madrimov won that one, you know, clearly to me. And Bud was taking a break that round, but round 8, Madrimov was not doing enough to me. Like even like Bud was like, he was not doing enough such that you knew it was his round. It's like what you said in the beginning. It's what you prefer. But with the rounds that Bud was winning, if you know how to score exchanges and not look at somebody dancing, like let's just say me and you supposed to fight, and I'm flaring up and like, oh, you want to fight? And my hands like, oh, wow, you want to fight? And I'm just like doing all like that and stuff. And then let's say you hit me, I hit you. People gonna say I win because I'm being all flary and stuff. Like you got to get that out your head of somebody like, you know, dancing and doing the Chris Brown and stuff, and like actually see who winning these exchanges. Round 9, Madrimov. He did. Which you laughing at Chris Brown?
Yeah, the Chris Brown. Yeah, go ahead.
Shout out to Chris Brown. 9-10 Madrimov. Madrimov did enough and Bud took a break. Chris Maddox is biased. Round 10, 10-9 Bud. Closer round, but Bud is doing more. It's competitively, but it's a relatively easy boxing match. It's competitive, but Bud is winning. Bud is getting the better of most of these exchanges. And then round 12, like I said, close round, and I said probably Madrimov.
What was round 11?
Oh, 11, 10-9 Bud. Bud landed cleaner counters to the body and then to the head. And then round 12, I said I don't know, because at that point I was just watching to be like, Bud, don't get knocked out.
So with that being said, right, you had it like with the round 12 or whatever it is, you know.
Let's say Madrimov.
I ain't even gonna count round 12. So up until that point, you had it like 8 rounds completely in favor of Terence Crawford.
Let's just say rounds,
2 of them you scored them 10-10. So you only
let's say those 2 that I give to Madrimov. Let's say those 2 I give to Madrimov. Let's just say
so even that's 3. It's out the trail. He says Madrimov was in there doing the Jason Derulo.
Say fainting his ass off.
Yeah. Yep.
What you was saying though? What you was saying? Even what now?
Now, even with those, like say for example, the like if you gave them the 2 rounds that you initially scored 10-10, that's just 3 rounds.
And then let's say I give him the 10th one. Only 4 rounds, 8-4. Like
rounds. So, yeah, 8-4.
But wasn't that risk of losing this fight?
Nope.
Like it's just because people they painted people's views on this.
Yeah.
What Alan said.
He says, "Hey, respect to you, man." He said he just saw highlights of the fight, but even the highlights looked exactly the way you explained it. You know, he won those exchanges, man. He won those exchanges. Yeah. But I mean, it was like, like I was saying it before you got on, like I really didn't see much from Madrimov for the majority of the fight to like give him that many rounds, you know. So, you know, some folks, you know, saying that whole thing with the 7-5, and I've seen even some people say that it was a draw. I'm like, what did you see from Madrimov that had you thinking that he won like half of those rounds, half of the rounds sold in the fight? Like I just didn't see it. Like, you know, doing the shimmy and the double fakes and all that type of stuff, like that isn't enough to win a round. You got to be able to be effectively aggressive in the majority of the round or the majority of the fight in order for you to win the fight, you know? So and that's why I pretty much say, like, for Madrimov, if you know that this is a guy that, you know, a lot of people are considering to be the top pound for pound fighter, you know, guy that has been a multi-division world champion, this is your first, you know, fight in the spotlight. And after the first few rounds, you're seeing that you're doing pretty well. Then you don't try to do a few more things from an offensive standpoint. And if it takes for you to, you know, eat a couple of punches, so to speak, go ahead and do that. You got to take those chances because, like, hey, you don't know when you're going to get this shot ever again. So why not go for it? You feel me? So, Bud showed
me what Andre Ward showed me when he switched it up on Kovalev. Okay, maybe not to that extent. But what I'm saying is we used to Bud.
Oh. Yeah, go ahead. I get what you're saying here, but go ahead and continue on this too.
And I'm trying to get this thought while I'm saying it too. I'm trying to like piece it together, so maybe you can help me finish it. But we are so used to Bud doing one thing and winning a fight a certain way where he doesn't have to like Bud had to be locked in this whole fight. He literally had to be locked in the whole fight. Like not even to say he fought a perfect fight, because he didn't fight a perfect fight, but he fought a very meticulous, locked in fight. And like with Andre Ward, we were so used to him fighting a boxing sort of you know, Andre Ward will rough people up too, but we were so used to him boxing to the most extent to where when he finally did do that dog in that Kovalev one, like it was just like, and then the beginning of the fight too, when he got knocked down, Like people didn't believe it. It was like you're not seeing, you're judging him for what he used to do versus what he actually did in this fight to claw himself back into the fight. Like this right here tells me everything I need to know about Bud. Bud is the #1 fighter. Like he makes fights look easy. Yes, he can't be just going up in weight and talking about fighting a 190 pounder, but Bud can win a boxing match because he'll keep you at the end of his 6 foot long arms, and he can win a fight where he hits you pretty constantly. Because truth be told, Bud was he wasn't doing what he wanted to, but at the moments when he let his hand go, he was damn near doing what he wanted to do. When he wanted to throw shots and land shots, and he was like, okay, 1 too many, let me get out.
Yeah, but I feel like he was still able to fight his fight. It's just that the opponent was just at a point where he's not, I kind of like said it was like a style matchup. So it ended up being this chess match because of Madrimov's style. Like Crawford was still being Crawford. He was still sitting back, counter-punching style, waiting to see what Madrimov was going to do and just work off of that. It was just that Madrimov was just not initially, I guess, cooperative in a sense to, try to fall into the trap. Props to Madrimov for that. But
let me just say this real quick.
You still had, Crawford still be comfortable, in multiple, parts of the fight. Yes, he did get tagged a little bit or whatever it is, but it wasn't to the point where he was in, really that much of a, issue over the course of the fight.
The person who actually beats Terence Crawford, the one thing that Madrimov did well is that, like you said, Madrimov was making Terence Crawford have to work in a sense. Mm-hmm. I can't think of the words you just used, but what did you just say? Madrimov was doing what? I was trying to find those words when you said them exactly.
Moving around and foot feints and all that type of stuff. But he made Crawford be a little bit more tentative.
Yes.
In what he was going to do, but he still was, in that level of comfortability to where I'm not gonna get out of my comfort zone in order to open myself up for, a Madrimov.
Yes. So the person that beats Crawford is going to have to make Crawford uncomfortable enough like Madrimov did. But the only difference is that you got to take some chances. Madrimov got to throw some punches. Mm-hmm. But we kind of know what would have happened if he would have opened up a little bit more. It's kind of, I ain't going to say it's easy to see, but Bud was landing more punches. If he opened up more and gave Bud more opportunities, what you think would happen?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of like seen it where Bud was, a little bit more aggressive in the tail ends of the fight, because when he opens up, he was, a little bit there as far as like speed for speed. He was there with Madrimov. It was just that on Madrimov's side, like he would just do almost like a quick twitch type of punch style. Like when he would throw the lead right, it was like quick twitch, like bam, it was like something that, maybe Terence Crawford wouldn't expect. But if Crawford like bites down and just goes at it, it's like, what? I'ma just fight. I'm gonna fight. So the thing about it was, it's like, yeah, there were times where Madrimov was able to land some clean shots here and there, but he didn't do enough. He didn't do enough.
But what he did do was that he had the same style as Lomachenko, which means that he get an automatic, I ain't saying the same, but similar style, which means he get an automatic 1 or 2 check marks. He get the benefit of the doubt bias. Like from the public anyway, from the announcers, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the thing there, man. It was just that he just didn't do Madrimov didn't necessarily do enough to win those rounds, basically. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I was like, why are some of these people saying that maybe it was a draw or that the scorecards weren't necessarily accurate or anything like that. Looks like he had dropped off or got a call or something. All right, he's back on it.
JR, what was you gonna say about the parallel between Andre Ward and, because I was drawing a parallel, but then you was like you was gonna bring something to it or mention something on that.
Oh, in reference to like Andre Ward's style or like expectation or something. But the thing
Yeah, the
about
expectation of his style.
Ward, like the thing with Andre Ward is he has that level of comfortability where he could adjust to any type of style that his opponent would have, and you see those elements there with Terence Crawford. Is that like I said initially, opening in the bout, he kind of like had that counter punching style, and when Madrimov wouldn't necessarily oblige, in those opening rounds of the fight, that's when you're seeing a little bit more aggression by Terence Crawford, but it was more of like a accurate type of, aggression, like a couple punches to the body, coming forward, throwing a jab and all that type of stuff. But in this particular fight, and this kind of like goes into the whole thing with the announcing or or whatnot, right? Like for this fight, right? For the fight, you pretty much had Terence Crawford fighting in the southpaw stance. So, at least with Sean Porter, he kind of like mentioned it that he said, hey, maybe he should have, switched it back up to, being orthodox to kind of like, nullify what was going on with the success or whatever success that Madrimov had land in the right hand. So if Crawford like switched to orthodox, then maybe he could have had something where he would, take off that successful right hand. But the thing is, with him being in southpaw, he kind of like nullified the effectiveness of the jab that Madrimov would have had over the course of the fight. So I think that's what, they kind of like decided, like, let's just stick at southpaw so that his jab wouldn't be as effective, and just, take what we can there with the right hand.
And that's one thing that I failed to mention, which was the story of the fight. Crawford's jab is what won him this fight, is what made it look so easy, which is what allowed him to mess up what's his name eye.
Mm-hmm.
Like Crawford, between the jabbing, between arm barring his arm, where you posting his arm or keeping his arm there to where he couldn't move it, between parrying, like Crawford's front hand wasn't perfect, but it was a very effective weapon, because it allowed him to do everything else, and then it started allowing him to get off them body shots.
Yeah. Yep. So
Crawford, number one fighter, man. That's how I feel.
So yeah, that's the discussion. There is, we put him, back there within number one in the pound for pound rankings, or at least on my end, because it was more about activity for Terence Crawford in comparison to the other two fighters that were pretty much around that top three, and Alexander Usyk and Iowa Inoue. Like Usyk and Inoue, pretty much like had fights, at least with what Usyk had about 2 fights, and Inoue had about a couple fights after Terence Crawford's last fight. So that kind of like was a factor in there in that, as far as like the boxing source pound for pound rankings. Now, can
I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you reminded me of Usyk again, because it's always, what have you done for me lately? Okay, let's just say 1A, 1B then with him and Usyk.
Okay, gotcha.
Because Usyk, you can't take away from what Usyk did.
Yeah, gotcha.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah.
But Crawford, they both pretty good, man. But yeah. I don't know.
Feel you. So now with Terence Crawford there, winning the WBA Super Welterweight Championship, he is now the WBO interim Super Welterweight Champion. And for the WBC, they say this was a final eliminator for that WBC World Championship. We'll have to see what's next for that. But real quick, I want to see what Juice was saying here on the chat. It says Madrimov did just enough to prevent Crawford from making a statement, but not enough to prevent Crawford from moving up and winning the world title. And people could say that. Yeah, and I'll get into this a little bit. There with the current standing, there for Terence Crawford, being a world champion WBA, being a WBO interim champion there at super welterweight, and being most likely ranked number one in the WBC. Now it could be like, what's next? Now there are some that kind of like had gave him props here for getting this win, but I kind of like hinting at it here with this, right? There's a lot of talk about him potentially facing Canelo Alvarez there at 168. At least for me, let's kind of like tone that down a little bit. I want to see him do some more work there at 154 pounds. And so that's where things kind of open up here a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of great fights that are out there for Terence Crawford at 154 pounds right now. Okay. Before this fight was made, there was a potential fight that he could have had against Sebastian Fundora, who, defeated Tim Tszyu in March to become the WBC and WBO super welterweight champion. That fight is pretty much out there. Like I said, I'm telling you, man, Samson Lukowicz, don't duck me, son. I've been trying to contact Samson for like the past week and a half and haven't gotten any response from him. Don't duck me, son. So, because I wanted to get an update of sorts. What's going on with Sebastian Fundora? I know that they had sent out, a medical letter of exemption saying that he can't necessarily have any type of physical activity or whatever it is until September. Here we are in August, so September is coming up, and I know that the WBO was talking about, hey, you could have this, thing here with the medical exemption, but after that, you would have to, go ahead and fight Terence Crawford by the end of the year, or end up being stripped. But for me, I thought that was like crazy, because at that time when he did that, that's when Crawford had that agreement to face Madrimov, right? So with Crawford going that particular route, it's like, how could you still have him be obligated, or have Fundora be obligated to fight Crawford by the end of the year? I don't know how that's going to sort itself out. But also, of course, we saw what happened on March 30th or whatever it is. After the Tszyu Fundora fight, with Fundora getting the decision win, you had Errol Spence Jr. step in the ring. Well, I don't know if Errol Spence is going to be ready to fight Sebastian Fundora, where I would say would probably be scheduled for November, but no. But what we did have here earlier in this week, or a few days ago, is the announcement of the lineal champion at 154 pounds. Jermell Charlo say he's going to be back at 154. Now, with that being said, the WBC has Jermell Charlo as the WBC champion in recess. And usually when you're the champion in recess, if you feel like you're going to be going back down or going back to 154, you pretty much have first dibs on the WBC champion. So you have on one side Crawford trying to angle in with the WBO, but the other side you have Jermell Charlo there for the WBC. So, hey, I'm like this. Why not go ahead and have Crawford, go ahead and chill out for the rest of the year? And then we have Jermell Charlo versus Sebastian Fundora for those WBC and WBO titles. And then the winner faces Terence Crawford in 2025. I would have no issues with that whatsoever. What you think about that, Academic?
I mean, that doesn't sound bad. And let's just hope that Charlo does come back to form. Meaning that he's fighting somebody that his punches will affect, and that he is more willing to throw punches, because he don't think that one punch landed will like knock him out. You just prevent.
But that's where you have Fundora. Fundora isn't like, to me, like a one punch knockout type dude. He just accumulation of punches. Just wears you down. So you still have something where, hey, if you could get, you seen him be knocked out before. Hey, you had that, explanation of him, having that, thought, am I gonna get up? Do I want to get up after he got cracked by Brian Mendoza, right?
Yeah.
So hey,
You can chop the tree down. Somebody else chopped it.
you can chop the tree down. And up to that particular point where as I say, he landed the people's elbow on Tim Tszyu, which he really Tim Tszyu was getting the better of him.
Yeah, it was looking bad. It was
it
was looking like it was getting close to the end before the people's elbow.
Yeah. So I'm like, hey, if Charlo comes back and he faces up Fundora, hey man, I think you might be the odds-on favorite for that. So hey, I would like it. Like make that happen. Like have Jermell Charlo versus Sebastian Fundora, and then the winner face Terence Crawford in 2025. You know what I'm saying?
So something that you said earlier that I want to speak on.
Okay.
Will him fighting Canelo mean more in terms of like name recognition? Yes. But I think if he won the undisputed in this division, it will mean more than every other division he won it in. Because in these divisions, yes, he can hurt all these people, right? I'm sure he can, but they can take punches better than the smaller people can, which means that we get the opportunity to see him showcase his skills. The reason why we got the opportunity is because the guy wasn't going to let him hit him and he wasn't engaging, but we're going to get the opportunity to see Terence Crawford, box and raise his level. Like we got the opportunity to see Andre Ward show us the dog in him and just dog somebody out. I mean, we sort of did see it in what's the black guy name that he knocked out that he beat Bernard Hopkins?
What are you talking about? Jermaine Taylor joint or who?
Andre Ward knocked him out, but he beat Bernard Hopkins.
Oh, you talking about Chad Dawson?
Chad Dawson. So we saw the dog there, but that was just sort of like a mismatch, and Dawson was drained too. But neither here nor there. I'm saying we're gonna get the opportunity to see Terence Crawford raise his level. So him getting this undisputed will mean more than all the other undisputeds. Like this run will mean more than the other runs. And we're gonna get to see him showcase his skills and have to like dig deeper than what he has had to do.
And to this point here with 154, right? Like we kind of like, at least I've kind of like criticized and you criticize it when it comes to the super lightweight division, with Terence Crawford, right? So you had that thing there with the super lightweight division. Okay. Goes into welterweight and he faces Sean Porter. Well, Sean Porter wasn't the champ, but Sean Porter was, former two-time world champ. And he faces Errol Spence. So Errol Spence had 3 of the 4 major titles there at welterweight. Like here at this particular instance, like 154 is still, very, competitive. You still have Tim Tszyu. You got Vergil Ortiz Jr., who's going to be fighting on Saturday. You're going to have Jermell Charlo. You got Sebastian Fundora. You got, Erickson Lubin. You got a number of fighters at 154 where, Terence Crawford could have some good fights against those guys.
And most of them are big boys. They like big enough boys.
Yeah. So that's the thing about it, So I would rather see that than have, Terence Crawford go up 2 divisions to face Canelo Alvarez. That's just on a matchup perspective, right? But the other thing too is this. I want to see Canelo Alvarez facing David Benavidez. Nobody else. Nobody else at 168. I don't want to see Terence Crawford coming up 2 divisions to face Canelo Alvarez at 168. Pretty much like the same thing of where, they were talking about potentially Errol Spence fighting Canelo Alvarez at 168. Like, no, we don't want to see that. So give us Canelo versus David Benavidez. And this is going into the whole thing with folks talking about Turkey Al-Sheikh and saying, oh, he's giving us this, he's giving us that, he's giving us fights we want to see, he's doing things in boxing that haven't been done before. And I'm like, hold up, y'all, slow your roll. in reference to like overall fight cards, maybe you'll have the names tied to it. That's one thing. But the actual fights that people want to see, slow down on that, because we were just, off from a year or a couple of years where we got some great fights, and Turkey Al-Sheikh wasn't involved in any of that.
You're right. Boxing has been on the rise for a while.
Like 2023, like 2022, 2023, we pretty much got fights that we wanted to see in the sport of boxing. We've also had like fights in the past that had undisputed titles on the line. We had the welterweight title undisputed. We had the super welterweight title undisputed. We had the super bantamweight title undisputed. We had the super lightweight title undisputed. Like at least those four, all within the past couple of years, and Turkey Al-Sheikh wasn't involved in any of them. It was just that like say for example, Fury Usyk, not necessarily a world scale, but like a US scale, so to speak, people weren't like that invested into it. Yeah, it was going to be undisputed, but did like the US market really want that? No. And Usyk was basically a road warrior anyway, regardless of who he was fighting. So y'all having it over in Saudi Arabia, like, okay, y'all could go ahead and have that, but y'all couldn't have it in the UK. Like, what are we doing here? So as far as like, fights that people want to see, let's kind of slow down on that, because it's like, okay, what about like we can name fights that like I guess people want to see, like say, or Tank versus Lomachenko, or Tank versus Shakur Stevenson. Are we gonna get that? No, we ain't getting that next. What else could we have there, man? Like say, like if it was possible, right? Even at that particular point, Joshua versus Wilder. If folks were demanding Joshua versus Wilder, then y'all could have gone ahead and made that particular fight, regardless of what other things was going on behind the scenes or whatever. Y'all could have gone ahead and made that particular fight. So talking about fights that fans want to see, let's kind of like slow down on that here, on that thing. Matt Gomez says that Canelo cracks Terence Price on his collarbone and Team Crawford throws in the towel. Juice says he wants Bud versus Canelo at Allegiant Stadium. Nah, man, no. We gotta cut it out with this, football stadium, all that type of stuff, man. I'm
What's Allegiant Stadium?
The Raiders joint.
Oh, okay. Las Vegas, gotcha.
Yeah. I'm like, nah, like T-Mobile and that's about as good as it gets. T-Mobile, you know what I'm saying? But like that's the other thing too, though. If like Turkey Al-Sheikh is trying to make Bud versus Canelo, imagine if he tried to make that over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for Riyadh season. Like, even with that, like a fight like that would have to be here in the US. You feel me? So why would you even like have that open opportunity to make a fight like that and then end up having it over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia? That wouldn't be a good look. That wouldn't be a good look. Now maybe like if Turkey Al-Sheikh, like if he has money to blow, and I'm telling you, Bud pretty much like got paid up to like 16 million for this fight against Madrimov. And we all know that Canelo usually asks for a minimum of about $30 to $35 million for a fight. Pretty much is what he's gonna get here for this fight against Edgar Berlanga. I'm like, imagine how much he would probably, request for a fight against Terence Crawford, regardless of where the fight's going to be at. So, yeah, I don't know about that, man. He says that like Canelo wants $200 million to fight David Benavidez. Like, oh no, man. See, so it's like, why are folks like talking about fights that they just don't look right? Like, let's have fights within the divisions and have it be the top fights within the divisions. You know what I'm saying? if you're gonna have these promotional companies working together, so to speak, to like make these matchups, these 5v5s and all that type of stuff, then make the highest, the best matchups that you can make within those 5v5s or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? So you do have that, man. But with Crawford, yeah, I would like to see if he, just waits it out, see what happens with the WBC and WBO champion there. Like I said, man, Samson Lukowicz, I don't care, man. One way or another, we're going to have a conversation, man, because you can't be ducking me, son. You can't be ducking me. All right. But we're going to see what happens with Sebastian Fundora and what his moves are going to be here afterwards to see what his next fight is going to be, because I just think it's going to be unlikely that Terence Crawford gets back in the ring again this year. I would be surprised if he does. I would be surprised if he does. So, we'll see what's happening with that. All right. So that's it there for the main event for the first hour here. So we're going to try to break down the undercard here in the next hour. Co-feature bout, you had WBA super lightweight title on the line. Isaac Cruz versus Jose Rayo Valenzuela. And I mean, that one was something there where I think a few people were on the lookout as far as like if you were going to see an upset of sorts in that one. I said there in the preview or like going into it that I was like, well, if Rayo was able to use his height and use that to his advantage here against Isaac Cruz, and not necessarily fall into the trap of being on the inside too much with Isaac, then maybe he could get the better of him. And well, props to him being in camp there with Robert Garcia. He was able to get a split decision win over Isaac Cruz to become the new WBA super lightweight champion. 2 scores of 116, 112, and one score was in favor of Isaac Cruz of 115, 113. I think that was kind of like contrasting scores there, with 2 scores of 8 rounds to 4 in favor of Rayo Valenzuela and 1 score of 7 rounds to 5 in favor of Isaac Cruz there. But props to Rayo Valenzuela for him getting a decision win and him being the new super lightweight champion, man. It's been a lot of turnover there in the super lightweight division. I mean, you had what happened, over in April 20th, even though that didn't necessarily count, towards the world title, there. But you also had, the IBF world title changed hands. Liam Paro defeating Subriel Matias. You got, Teofimo Lopez having a fight against Steve Claggett, where, some, folks just said it wasn't all too, impressive, but hey, it is what it is. Teofimo's still the WBO champion, and just a lot of turnover there with the WBA. I mean, you had, Rolly Romero, who pretty much like got the title on some, crazy stuff there when he fought Ismael Barroso. And then Rolly loses it to Pitbull. And then now Pitbull loses it to, Rayo Valenzuela. Macomb says the Doberman beat the Pitbull. So props there for Rayo Valenzuela to, get that win. Some folks are saying like, oh, look, there's Tank Davis's next opponent. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Come on, y'all. Oh, goodness gracious. I mean, he already like won the version of the WBA title before when he stopped Mario Barrios, but him going up against Rayo Valenzuela, some people were trying to pair up Tank versus Rayo anyway. But I guess maybe his name is in the hat in the Tank sweepstakes in this, man. I don't know, dog, because what was it? Pitbull was talking about, oh, there should be a rematch for this or whatever it is. Man, I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah. 140, it looks like 140 is like a whole bunch of musical chairs. There's been like a lot of movement there at 140. We had, all those fights that I talked about. You had the whole thing there with Gary Antoine Russell and Alberto Puello. You've got Richardson Hitchens and, his fight that he had where it was really close and some people thought he lost that fight. So there's a lot of activity there at 140, But here with Raul Valenzuela getting this win, a number of people were kind of like upset, I guess, because Pitbull does have a following, you know what I mean, and he's built that following up over those past couple of years or so. But yeah, he just fell short in this one. But yeah, man. Trill though, Trill, I'm still disappointed that last year, man. I thought Giovanni Cabrera could have gotten that decision win last year, man. We would have had some good money on that because I thought Cabrera could have done. We could have had them scorecards, man, and we would have won that. If he would have won that fight, we would have won some money, man. Oh man, I'm still mad about that one though. But yeah, still, that's gonna be interesting though with Pitbull because Pitbull had the following. He had the momentum, and like this is going to be a setback here for him in a sense, and we got to see what would be next for him. But for Rayo, this opens up a lot of possibilities there for Raul Valenzuela in this one here at the 140-pound division. So we got to see what happens with that, man. So yeah. So did you get anything from that particular fight, Boxing Academic?
I mean, it showed us what we already knew. Pitbull against the wrong style, he gonna maul him, and against the wrong style for him, he's very containable. As long as you got good movement and a semi decent chin, you can beat him on a boxing match. As long as you can just stand, just getting hit maybe like 10, 12 times clean, because you will get hit at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just corral him and keep him on the edge of that punch. And Rayo was landing some decent punches too. I wish he threw the uppercut a bit more, but
right.
I mean, yeah, a couple of them landed, maybe, or they look good, but I mean, Pitbull is fine. Like, you match him against certain people. I think a match with him even and Devin would be interesting.
Yeah, it would. It would.
Pitbull marketable. Like, Pitbull losing don't mean nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Because he gonna give it your all, but you can put him in a nice little fence and box circles around him, and as long as you just don't get your circuits crossed, you fine. And Rayo was someone who was able to do that, so props to him.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think it was with Valenzuela getting that win that he did, as far as like the what is it, that knockout win over Chris Colbert, pretty much like got him, really, in a gear, so to speak. And he's been working there with Robert Garcia, and Robert Garcia is building himself a good little stable out there in his camp too. So he's been getting some good work out there with Robert Garcia, and having those wins that he had against Chris Colbert, or the win against Chris Colbert, because that first fight they had, a number of people may have thought that he won that initial fight against Chris Colbert, but it ended up being a decision loss in Colbert's in favor of Colbert there. But him, just outperforming and ended up knocking out Chris Colbert and flattening him last December, that kind of like got him back in the gear there to get back in this. And for this particular fight, I kind of said like, hey, this was his first fight at 140, but I said, hey, this is two guys that were at 135 recently fighting for a 140-pound title, and the thing with Isaac Cruz is he beat a guy that was at 135 pounds anyway, so that's the thing about that. So we got to see how that goes there, man. Hey, this is something here from my Matt Gomez, man. Regis Prograis would beat Rayo Valenzuela. He says he's not sold on Rayo. Isaac now holds the record for the shortest junior welterweight reign. Damn, it was what, 3 months? Yeah, I think it was 3 months, wasn't it? No, 5. 5. What the hell? Oh, now what's going on? Boxrec, man. What the hell's going on,
I
man?
don't know about that, Matt. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know. There might have been a shorter title
Well, I'm
reign.
saying I don't know about what's his name beating Ryo.
Oh, Regis.
Regis. I don't know about that.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Regis is up there, man. Regis is up there. Damn. 35. Damn. Yo, as far as like the contenders at 140, he's like the oldest out the group, man. Yo, that's wild. Therefore, yes, I don't know about that either, man. I don't know. Maybe I think damn, he hasn't. He's damn. That thing is delayed though. He was supposed to be fighting Jack Catterall, but it got delayed. So I got to see when the new date of that is. Oh, real quick, man. I got of course our guy, the chef is in the building. You know what I'm saying? The manager's in the building, the promoter's in the building, the security man's in the building. What's going on? This brother Terrell, man. What's happening?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I was just trying to debate: should I come in and have your announcement as the excellency, or the African booty scratcher?
Come on.
But I defer to my typical Terrell Thomas, so I'll leave it at that and stay kosher and all that stuff. So what's up, everybody?
Oh man, what's
What's up, man?
So yeah, I was just getting in there talking about the co-feature about that happened last night there with Ryo getting a decision win over Isaac Cruz. So now he's the WBA super lightweight champion. I say that maybe he has an entry in the Tank Davis sweepstakes or something or whatever it is, but man, I don't know. So like if you have thoughts about that, and then also since you just got in, share your take on what happened with Terence Crawford and Israil Madrimov.
Yeah, unfortunately, due to I was extremely busy last night. I didn't get to watch virtual fights. I jumped in on a bit of the what fight was that, Mike? We talked about real quick. Which one?
I got to go back and look at the chat.
The big baby fight.
Okay.
Big baby, yeah.
The new big baby, Jared Anderson. I saw the last part of that fight, how that ended up and everything, but I wasn't able to catch any of the other fights. So I was just busy doing some other stuff and everything. But but still, with that said, I think what you just said about the Isaac Cruz fight and about the guy that won that, I think it would be a perfect opportunity for Tank to step up and take him on. Back at the 140. I mean, because at this point now, it's still nothing solid with Tank Shakur Stevenson. Out to my knowledge, I know that Eddie Hearn's got to fight last night, chopping up with Shakur, things like that. So that's interesting. And we all know that Eddie Hearn just wants to kind of collect pieces at this point for Matchroom and everything. And so he would love to sign Tank. I'm sorry, not Tank, but Shakur, even though there may not be a clear-cut plan as far as the list of opponents for him to fight other than Tank. I mean, because does Matchroom who they have at 135 that's relevant? Nobody,
like
right?
I was saying before, like the only guy that I could mention there that's on Matchroom in the lightweight division is Andy Cruz. Yeah. But the thing was, Eddie Hearn did say that there would be a slight possibility that Shakur Stevenson could campaign at 140 pounds.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, first of all, they gotta. They probably want to sign him first, but you sign this guy, right? It's going to be like let's say a 3-4 year deal. I mean, he goes up to 140 to fight who? He's never fought at 140. I remember him and Haney were going back and forth for a while. Right. I think Haney wanted him to come to 140. He never would. Everything. So I don't know. So right now, it's just so much uncertainty right now with Shakur, being that he just remains unsigned. So we don't know. But like I said, going back to Tank, it'll be an excellent opportunity for him to jump up to fight that guy and hope he grab that belt and everything. So, but I didn't get to see the fight. I didn't even get to read about it yet either. Just what was it? Was it did guys Connor Cruz well, or what happened in that?
I was, basically him, having the, boxing ability to keep Cruz at bay for, more of those rounds, so to speak. And, You know, just him being able to hold off Isaac Cruz. But you know, like Box Academic said, like, you know, Isaac Cruz is, you know, who we pretty much see is like he's an unpolished fighter that, you know, just ends up, you know, bullying his way to trying to get to his opponents. And if you have, you know, just a good enough boxing ability, you know, to keep him, you know, at bay, then, you know, I would say like for example, like a Devin Haney, I would say a Devin Haney would have an easy time against an Isaac Cruz because he's tailor made for like something like that. You know what I'm saying? Because he'll have the movement, enough movement, and he's just, you know, too small to really like get to Devin Haney unless Devin Haney allows it, so to speak. So I think that's kind of like the thing there with Rayo is that like he had enough, you know, behind him then to like keep Isaac Cruz you know, at bay for, you know, most of those rounds, at least through the judges' eyes or to the judges' eyes, so to speak. There, man.
So that sounds like a classic bull and matador approach to fighting Cruz in that regard. Like I said, enough boxing skills and enough decent power, jab, boom, 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 keep him off of you, enough lateral movement, and stick to that plan. And just even with Cruz, and we know he's like a little wrecking ball in a sense, but even still with that style, you still have to have some skill sets, right?
Yeah.
And not necessarily the same fighter, but kind of the same style. Sean Porter was definitely a bit of a wrecking ball, but he did develop some more skills moving forward in his career in that regard. So definitely.
Yeah, he had a lot more in that. Like he wasn't, you know, that he wasn't that bad. And outside of maybe his fight against what was it? Who was it? Not like a Kell Brook or something like that, but like he had like one fight where it was just crazy. Like he wasn't even like that against Adrian Broner, you know what I mean? But he's had those type of fights where he's like kind of mucked it up a little bit, you know what I'm saying?
Definitely earlier. Yeah, definitely.
Like against Andre Berto, like he was like really, you know, in your chest and all that type of stuff, tying you up and rough you up and all that. And it kind of got, you know, Andre Berto frustrated over the course of that particular fight. But yeah, I you know, I give you know, Sean Porter a little bit more credit than that too, though, because you know he had to have a little bit more in order to become a two-time welterweight champion there in that particular sense. So yeah, is there. But also anything real quick on that Crawford Madrimov, as far as like, you know, any thoughts on him Crawford getting that decision win?
Yeah, on that one, I didn't see that one. So I was driving back to Tampa during that one. Definitely got back home, jumped on boxing real quick, just get a quick download of that one. Sounds like a very tactical match in that regard. And we see Crawford saw knockout streak end, I think, at 11 fights. That's the regard. I mean, the guy was strong. He's a strong guy, strong, tactical as well, and just durable, strong and durable in that regard. So I mean, I'm not disappointed by he didn't get a knockout. I mean, I'm glad to hear that he got the win for him. That announced his presence in the division, and as Crawford said himself, he is now the best man in that division, was kind of a statement. But I mean, that remains to be seen,
right?
If he truly is and everything. Because I mean, of course, we know about his accolades at 130, 135, 140, and of course 47. Now comes in and grabs a bet up at 54. I mean, now there's new business. There's definitely new business to be made. So we want. I mean, of course, if he can do it, he can do it. But now I think with last night's result, as I think you guys probably already talked about, the prospect of a Crawford Canelo fight probably is kind of quiet at this point. You know, so and even in this post fight interview, he kind of alluded to that. So so I think it's back on the table for right now. Just chill with that. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, whether it's, you know, probably scheduled for, you know, next year, May of next year, whatever it is, or what, like I just don't. I'm not really interested in that. Like, you know, give us fights that are at 154 pounds, and for Canelo, like give us Benavidez, or you know, try to go up to 175 or something like that, and try to, you know, get back in the mix there with Dimitri Bivol, or just don't even, just roll off. Like if you're trying to get free money, like it looks like, people are saying here with this Berlanga fight, then just say you're getting free money. You know what I mean? But as far as like, building on your overall legacy, so to speak, then yeah, you're gonna have to fight David Benavidez, especially when the super middleweight run that you had. Yeah, I don't know about all that too tough. I don't know about that. But we're gonna go into a couple more of these fights that were on the card. I'll get into this thing here that Matt Gomez brought up. You had the heavyweight fight between Jared Anderson and Martin Bakole there, and Jared Anderson ends up getting stopped by Martin Bakole there in the 5th round. Got knocked down. Was able to get up, was still competing there, but he just didn't necessarily have the defensive wherewithal to, get away from Martin Bakole's punches. And, going into it, I thought, with Bakole, it was more about what state Bakole was going to be in going into, this particular bout, because, in his last bout that he had over in Riyadh, he was out there at like 200 and, almost at 300. But for this one, he was, back around his, weight that he's been at, recently. So, he was able to, get this win. And remember, Bakole's has only had one loss, and that was, due to, what it was, like a injury that he suffered there in his right shoulder. So he probably couldn't move his shoulder there against Michael Hunter though. But outside of that, he had up to the point like 20 wins, and 15 of those wins by way of knockout. And with Jared Anderson, he was out there with Sugar Hill Stewart. This was like his first bout out there with Sugar Hill Stewart, and it was, yeah, he just looked like he still hadn't gotten his defense down, and this was at the point. This was kind of like the point where it was like, okay, there was no other route. I guess there was no other route that they said that Jared Anderson could go at this particular point, because he had built up his record and his standing there at 100 and or at the heavyweight division, right? So he was there fairly highly ranked in the WBO rankings at heavyweight, and you had Martin Bakole there currently ranked number 1 in the WBA. So this was almost like a barometer to see, okay, is Jared Anderson one of those top contenders in the heavyweight division, or did they have to slow him down a little bit? But there was I guess there was a lot, going behind what's going on, because you had the thing there with Jared Anderson, right? He's there with Top Rank, but also, managed there by Jay Prince. Okay. And, ever since he got signed by Top Rank, he had been with, his trainer since he was like 8 years old, and Coach Derry Riley. And I guess for this particular fight, I guess Jared Anderson decided to, be out there with, Sugar Hill Stewart out there in Detroit or whatever it is. And, you basically seen what happened here in this particular bout. And I guess, it kind of like goes into, Jared Anderson kind of like moving over to Houston, kind of like being part of that, environment or whatever it is with Jay Prince and them. And, after this fight, it was like said that after this fight, Jared Anderson made a phone call back to his, original trainer and said, hey, I'm ready to go back. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with that, because this is his first loss. Of course, you can't necessarily like dismiss a fighter after they suffered his first loss. But, I think here in this particular case, with Jared Anderson, losing the way he did, then they're going to see about rolling him back a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So It almost looked like, what was it? I know that Matt Gomez says that like McCauley drilled Jared Anderson, reminded him of George Foreman. I'm like, hey man, looked like a lot of those punches that that Jared Anderson was landing on McCauley. He was just shrugging them off and laughing at him with type of stuff. It's like, nah, dude, this is not bothering me at all, at all. And so, yeah, I think Jared Anderson has to work a little bit more, especially for defensive abilities, but also trying to get a little bit more behind his punches because he just didn't have that much to really affect Martin McCauley in that particular bout there. Academic, were you able to catch any highlights of that?
Yeah, I saw the fight, and it's not like we didn't already sort of predict this. Unfortunately, I don't want to wish bad on other people, but I saw the signs, y'all saw the signs, and dare I say it, his team had to have seen the signs. Maybe since he switched teams, maybe that gives more insight to it, but they had to have seen the signs that this guy is susceptible in the wrong ways, in the form of his defense, in the form of he fights sort of like I don't know, but name somebody who throws arm punches and don't really like stand 10 toes down on their punches when they throwing shots, and it's more maybe he's trying to throw for speed, but it ain't necessarily power. You gonna say Adrian Broner?
Well, you said speed.
I'm saying with the punches he throw,
it's like
he ain't turning the punches over.
What happened last week? Was it? I think it was last week. What happened last week in the heavyweight division? It had an upset of sorts because you talk about speed, and this guy is the absolute opposite of speed. You know who I'm talking about, Boxing Academic.
Oh, Slugfish.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
What you saying? Tell me what you're saying. I don't get it.
That he, but he's a guy that's even bigger than Jared Anderson. But his punches, you don't really get all you getting is arm punches there.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, all he do is arm punches. Yeah.
So you get the same thing here in a sense with Jared Anderson, as far as like him not being able to completely sit down on his shots, but also I think this was at the point where you got a heavyweight division. There's like, how they say there's like levels in reference to, skill, or they say there's weight classes for a reason. But there's when it comes to like heavyweights, it's like there's heavyweights and then there's like super heavyweights, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So you got guys that are like like a Jared Anderson, or like a Michael Hunter, so to speak, right? That are like 6'1" to 6'3" and that type of stuff, and they're able to get up to a certain point. But when you're facing guys that are like a 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", that's a whole different animal. You feel me? So I think that's what you pretty much got here in this particular instance, where Martin McCauley was just like, "Hey man, nah,
you too small.
Yeah, you too small. You just too small."
However, what I also saw was like people try to knock down Deontay Wilder a few rungs because they moved him at the pace that they should have moved him. Why would they put him in this fight? Why would they even put Jared Anderson in this fight?
Okay, that's the thing that that I kind of like raised up earlier in a what is it, like Twitter space or something like that, right? So the thing about it was, and I kind of like explained it earlier, the move to go with, I guess, Sugar Hill Stewart might have been a little bit a part of what the management team for Jared Anderson wanted for him to kind of like angle him, and that's the thing. It's about the money. There it is. Tidbit said it. So you had him. He was basically paid $1.2 million to fight Martin McCauley,
which is pretty good, right?
That's very good. That's very good. So with that 1.2, it's crazy because you're getting paid a significant amount, but you ain't with the trainer that you've been with, your entire life. You go ahead and you switch up to, facing or rolling with Sugar Hill Stewart. But also, you're also managed by, Jay Prince there. And I don't know if Antonio Leonard is involved with them or not, but, still, what you don't want to have is so many hands in the pot. You feel me? So that's the thing that I just didn't necessarily like in that particular sense. So, like I said, after the loss, first thing that Jared Anderson did basically is he called his old trainer and said, "Hey, I want to come back," but his trainer said, "Hey, I'll do it, but you're gonna have to pay me. No, you're gonna have to pay me. Like I tried to tell you, because for past couple years, his trainer was saying, hey, we're just trying to build him up. We're just trying to, get those fights, the accumulation of fights up to, build his record up, like we said with Deontay Wilder, right? But I kind of said, like, at a particular point when
and the experience too.
Yeah, and the experience, right? But at like some particular point where he ended up facing, I think it was maybe like Tashenko, right? And then after that, he faced Jerry Forrest. And in that particular fight, you kind of like seen those things there when it came to defense against Jerry Forrest, right? Then after that, he faced George Arias, and that was for a couple of minor titles there in the heavyweight division. George Arias is another one of those guys that are like 6 feet, 6'1", pretty much should be like around, as they say now, the Bridgerweight division, but competed at heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you're fighting guys that are around the same size, and yeah, you'll be able to kind of like dominate them. But when you're facing like, bigger guys that have, resistance, punch resistance, you're going to need something else. And here, he didn't have anything else here against Martin Bacoli. So he ended up getting beat up there, man. Let me see here. All right. So like, all right, we'll see what happens here. Academic, man. If you gotta see if you're rolling out here pretty soon. So oh man, listen, I'm telling you, up to this point, I ain't seen one episode yet. They're boxing academic.
You missing out, man. You missing out. But yeah, I'm gonna drop off. Game of Thrones on.
Man, hey man. All right, so props to you for joining in here on this live. There, we'll be able to catch you later here, man. Matt Gomez says Martin Bacoli will walk right through Big Bang Zhang. Ooh, I want to see it. I want to see that fight. The next Riyadh season, if they're gonna do another Riyadh season type thing, not the one that's over in the UK, but maybe the one that's for October 12th is too soon anyway. If they do like say for example, if they do another Day of Reckoning, like a Day of Reckoning 2 or something with or whatnot, right? Go ahead and have Martin Bacoli versus Big Bang Zhang. You know what I'm saying? Let's see what happens with that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but yeah, Tip. Yeah, I feel you on that, man. The Riyadh fight and the Charles Martin fight was enough there to kind of like see where Jared Anderson was as far as like deficiencies or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. I think that's what they've been using it for these Riyadh season cards. It's a 22-foot ring. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. So well, yeah, man.
Some stuff we talked about last week, JR, about this Anderson Bacoli fight was like what weight was Bacoli gonna come in at?
Yeah. So
it looks like he came in around 280 last night, and Anderson around 250. And last week we said that if Bacoli came in at 300, that would definitely be suggestive that he's not necessarily in shape. And I'm not saying taking the time now we're not taking the fight seriously, but you come in at 300 and just looking kind of soft in the belly, things like that. You kind of know where you're at with your prospects of this fight. But even in all the pre-fight interviews with Bacoli, It's definitely sounded like he was definitely motivated to come in against the I guess say number one American heavyweight right now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his things too was that he said, well, you know what? He said no one has never really fought Anderson back, right? He said people just get in there, they fight, but as in to let him know he's in the fight, because typically Big Baby, he's typically the aggressor in all his fights that we've seen, right?
Yeah.
And while he may not sit down on each and every punch, he does throw. He is very active in the ring, all right, with his movement, pressure, style, things like that. I'm not sure if his punch output per round, but typically he's definitely an aggressor, right? So I'm not saying the bully got bullied, but in that sense, that's a part of the mentality of this fight. And also on top of that, kind of big brother, little brother. Like, how old is Bacoli? How old is he?
Oh, I just had his page up. Let me see if I could pull it up here again. He's like 32. He's 32.
Yeah, and Anderson's what, 24, 25,
I'm
something
only
like that.
24.
So, yeah. So, and at this point, Anderson does have his romance ring, but sometimes, as you guys mentioned, sometimes there's levels to it in that regard. And especially with Bacoli being 6'6", 6'7", at 280, that's a big dude. That's a big boy. That's a big boy, right?
Yeah.
And a big boy with skills on top of that. And as we definitely saw, power. That's real power that guy has. To be able to come in there and even at 250, Big Baby, he's not a small heavy. He's not a small heavyweight. He's smaller, but he's not small, right? So, but I mean, it was just an opportunity for Bacoli. He grabbed it, uses size, uses power, things like that. And I'm not critical of Big Baby too much because me personally, I thought he was ready. I definitely thought he was ready. I mean, we kind of saw a sign of that in the Charles Martin fight. That when someone beats physical back with him, that's something he still has to navigate that in that type of opponent. But Bacoli just kind of made that come to fruition for him and everything. It's kind of funny when the ref called out the fight. He's like, "Shit." He's like, "This, like, basically, like, this is really happening to me. I'm the one that's usually doing this to people in that regard." So. But it's a learning curve. I mean, but like I said last night in our group, I think they probably need to sit him down for the rest of the year. He's always been active, which I love that about him, about sitting active. But sit him down for the rest of the year. We don't want him to come back too soon, and we want to come back and be confident in that regard. And what's the name of the guy? The little small heavyweight he fought the guy before this.
Well, you talking about for Jared?
Yeah.
Oh, he fought Riyad Murray before this, man.
Yeah. So I mean, when they do come bring him back against someone that's real, not someone that's going to run around the ring and being there to survive. So
right, yeah.
So I mean, but it's part of the process, and like we all say, just because you're old has went, it doesn't mean you're washed up.
Right. Exactly. So, we got a heavyweight that's had two losses that basically is fighting for a world title in September in Daniel Dubois when he goes up against Anthony Joshua. So he was able to get back in the mix, have the win against Jarrell Miller, have the win against what was it, Filip Hrgović, to get himself back in the mix there in the heavyweight division. So like I said, you said, like, one loss doesn't necessarily completely write you off. I mean, he's going up against Anthony Joshua, who has like 3 losses there currently in his pro career. So, and you see what Anthony Joshua has done up to this point. So I say here, one loss doesn't necessarily put you completely out of the mix. You just got to be able to build yourself back up. But the thing is, with Top Rank, they have those guys that have been in the game for many, many years and the matchmakers too. So they'll be able to match him up well. And if Jared Anderson is going to be back, with his original coach there, Derry Riley, then yeah, they're gonna keep working on it, keep developing him so that he'll be right back in the mix. I mean, this is like not that much different than what you have here with Efe Ajagba, right? Because Efe Ajagba was build himself a undefeated record, got up in there, and then faced Frank Sanchez in 2021, where it just ended up he was outclassed in that. But ever since then, they kind of like had those things where they match him up against certain fighters here and there, and just built up his record again. So now he's at has 20 wins with just that lone loss. So they could pretty much do the same thing here with Jared Anderson. If they could, as long as they keep finding opponents there for Jared Anderson, then they'll be able to build up his record again. You feel me? So yeah. I don't know. He says, can Bohachuk be a modern day George Foreman? Man, I don't know, man. It just depends on how he's matched up. But hey, if they do end up making Martin Bohachuk versus Zhilei Zhang, then maybe we'll have something. But hey, Bohachuk versus Zhang, that would be a real barn burner for as long as it lasts, man. Whoever lands the best punch first wins in that one. I want to see it. I mean, hey, it's a heavyweight division. Anything can happen in the heavyweight division. I want to see it. I definitely want to see it.
Yeah, that would be a great fight. And I would, even after the process of hearing that, I would probably get an edge to Bohachuk. And the reason why I say that, Zhang barely throws punches.
Yeah, he barely throws punches. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a matter who gets there first.
Yeah. And it's just that as long as Bohachuk is not able to get hit flush with the left hand, he's going to have a real shot. So you do have that, man. Want to get into the other heavyweight fight against two guys that are pretty much like friends or whatever it is. You had Jarrell Miller there versus Andy Ruiz there in the heavyweight division. It ended up going 12 rounds. I don't know why this thing had it in 12 rounds. Like, if it isn't for any type of title, why are y'all going 12 rounds? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But you did go 12 rounds. And had the scorecards, and it was 116, 112, and two scores of 114, 114 even for it to be a majority draw. And the one judge that had it 116, 112 was in favor of Andy Ruiz Jr. But, a lot of people were saying like it was mainly Jarrell Miller that was doing more here in this particular bout against Andy Ruiz, And the thing was, it was like, Jarrell Miller was like really, really bummed out that he didn't get the the favoritism there of the judges, because he could have had a little bounce back, of course, after having the stoppage loss to Daniel Dubois, and that he would get rocked right back into it. So that was like another one of the questions that I had up here was Jarrell Miller robbed of the victory in this particular bout against Andy Ruiz Jr. And Tip Bettis says he definitely did rob it, baby. We're gonna see what we have here about like 15 or so minutes. Hey, Tip, if you're able to, you think you could jump back in? Let me see here. I'm gonna see if I could hit you up with a link or something like that. Let me see if I could roll that in here real quick. And then see if you'll be able to jump on. So I'm going to see if I can send that link out to you if you're able to jump on here for a little bit too. So, but yeah, Big Baby Miller was like saying, hey, you know what? I look like I'm completely back. I've been working really hard. I was trying to get, back in the mix. I've, kind of like slimmed down, so to speak. There he was at 305 pounds here for this particular bout, after being over 330 for his last couple of bouts. So I mean, he did pretty well as far as like getting himself in a gear, you know what I mean? So that was that, man. But yeah, it was like they kind of took it away from him thereby having it be a majority draw, but 8 rounds to 4 in favor of what it was, Andy Ruiz Jr. Yeah, that's crazy work, man. That's crazy work. And the thing with Andy Ruiz, that was like his first bout that he's had in a couple of years. He was supposed to fight in 2023 against Deontay Wilder, but wouldn't necessarily make that fight happen because he said they were basically asking for too much money for that. So I was like, well, if you weren't going to get in a fight with Deontay Wilder, at least try to get a fight with somebody. But he didn't necessarily do that, and then got it back in here with Jarrell Miller. And some folks were like saying that he wasn't all too hot as far as like being in the gym and all that type of stuff. He was like, hey, I've been back. I was eating Snickers and the food, too much food, and I'm like, oh man, see, that's why he was pretty much around at 275 in this bout against Jarrell Miller, which was kind of like his highest weight since that second fight that he had against Anthony Joshua there. So as far as like maybe his overall output, like he couldn't really keep up there with Big Baby Miller in a lot of those rounds. But hey, I guess the judges kind of lean towards Andy Ruiz, I guess. You know what I'm saying? All right, so I got my guy in here. Of course, he is the number one fan of Keith, one-time Thurman. That's right. It's my guy Tip, man. What's going on with you?
Yo. What's going on?
What's happening with you, man?
Not much.
Yeah, man. Hey, yeah. What you think about the overall card that happened last night, yo?
Nah, it was a good card. I liked the card. It was too long though. It was too long.
Hey, I like I said at the start of the joint, I warned folks. I said, listen, with this whole Riyadh season type stuff, y'all seen it when you had the initial joint there with Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. I don't think that many people kind of saw the play then. But then you had the joint with the Day of Reckoning, and that was the first one where folks were saying like, "Oh my goodness, this thing is like lasting the whole entire day, man. This is going on forever."
It took like 7 hours.
7 hours, yeah. So you had the joint there with the Day of Reckoning. That was about 6 to 7 hours. Then you had the whole thing there with the Knockout Chaos, right, in March, and then pretty much had the same thing with the Matchroom versus Queensberry 5v5 on June 1st. And I was saying here with this one, I was like, when I saw it on the Ticketmaster joint, and it said that doors was opening at about 1 p.m. Pacific time, I was like, oh no, here we go again. They're gonna have this thing lasting forever. And that's exactly what we got.
Well, with the 5v5, I don't think the 5v5 is much of a problem. It's what the prelims. Like, you can't have that many fights and then have that many prelim fights. It's unnecessary to have that many prelim fights.
Yeah, but I kind of like see that, but even with some of these other cards and these other promotional companies, they have it like that. Like, for example, with Canelo versus Munguia, like they basically have that thing starting at about 3 p.m. Pacific time or whatever it is, and then you don't necessarily get the main event until maybe like 8 p.m. or 9 o'clock Pacific time. But I'm like, y'all gotta get these things moving. Like, come on, like like what are we doing out here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then they put that Eminem performance. That was terrible, man. I ain't gonna lie, that was terrible. I mean, it might have been good for the fans, but you know what I'm saying, like,
yeah, I think
people watching.
That was it, man. But that's part of the whole thing with, I guess, Riyadh season. Tying in entertainment and sports and all that type of stuff. But yeah, like all of that was like unnecessary, man. Like they could have had that performance, like, I don't know, before the main before the main card, or out there in like a separate thing, or what I'm saying. It was almost like they put it in there like a halftime show. You feel me?
But by the time they were done, everybody's energy was already exhausted of even wanting to see the main event.
Right. Yeah.
They took the energy out of that fight.
Yeah, and it didn't necessarily hope that, you know, some folks that, you know, maybe would have, you know, saw, like, for example, we kind of like explained this earlier, like Terence, if they were seeing like Terence Crawford for the first time going up against Israil Madrimov, and, you know, they kind of like were like saying, hey, this is Terence Crawford. He's, you know, number one guy pound for pound. He's, you know, stopped everybody, you know, in the welterweight division. He's had a 11 fight knockout streak, and he was, you know, doing this and doing that against all of these opponents. And then you see him here against Israil Madrimov, and while, you know, it was, you know, mainly I would say a clear 8-4 victory for Terence Crawford. You know, some may say like, hey, you know, I thought this guy was, you know, the goods, and I kind of like said this as far as like, you know, a odds perspective or a betting perspective, they heavily lean towards Terence Crawford, and they were leaning towards a knockout, and we didn't necessarily get that. So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I think for the casual, yeah, they messed that up for Crawford. They definitely messed that up for Crawford.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they were selling something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That performance didn't sell at all.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I haven't necessarily like gone into the whole thing with the financials and all that type of stuff as far as like, you know, ticket sales and how things are modified and everything like that. But, you know, going from a timing perspective, like having this Riyadh season type of schedule in America like that doesn't necessarily work. I want to, like, if you were going to have it like that early, as far as like opening the doors there that early, right? Then get the thing moving so it would be like you could have this done at a certain time, especially now, right? Like this is right before football season starting. So you could have had it to the point where, hey, nobody's really watching any like major sports. Yeah, you do have the Olympics going on right now, but there's no major sports that are going on right now, you know, outside of the thing for baseball. And baseball really doesn't have, you know, that many marquee games happening on Sundays except for like one. You know what I'm saying? So, well, I'm not Sunday, but Saturday, right? So you could have had that thing there with Terence Crawford versus Israil Madrimov around like 9 p.m. Eastern time or something like that. And, you know, folks would have watched it. You know what I'm saying? Like, how are you going to have it to where you starting your card at like 4 p.m. Eastern time and it don't end until about 1:30 a.m.? Come on, man. What are we doing? What are we doing? So you could have had that opportunity to have, you know, as many eyes as possible watching Terence Crawford, but you wanted to have, you know, all of these activities and all that other stuff going on, you know, before that. You know, like you said there, Tip, like, you know, you could have had it to where, you know, people were barely, you know, staying up for that. Like I had folks like hit me up like saying, man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it for the main event. And so it was like, yo, we couldn't necessarily do it. Yo, Terrell, you had something?
No, like I said, I need to read digest that, but I'm just listening to you guys on that. So go for it.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like I mean, if y'all would have caught me, man, I was like up mad late yesterday. I mean, I had you know, was like working another event, and then I was able to come back and, you know, catch the thing there for the main event. By the time I got home, shoot, the Eminem concert just finished, and so they were just walking out with the main event. So I was able to watch, you know, the entire fight there. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yo, yeah, being up in like 2 a.m., you know, assessing the fight, and you know, I did like a, you know, quick reaction to it, and I'm like, yo, man, it's about 2:30 a.m. when I like finished the immediate reaction to it. I'm like, yo, nah, this can't do it, man. You can't do it. So I said this, like, overall, like they're gonna have to do something as far as like, you know, moving these cards, you know, quicker, you know. But, you know, like I said, now that we're about to go into the point where we're in football season over here in the US, that's gonna be real difficult, man. So I don't know. I think that should be one thing that they should try to do, regardless of what happens, there with football or whatever it is. Just have these main cards start earlier. I know that like PBC and them, they were trying to do that. But even with that, it still seems like the main event ends up being at a late time there on the East Coast. So it's really crazy, man.
But I mean, but just to jump back in real quick, remember the first event they had? What was that? Over a good year ago, the first time they've had to fight big card over in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia,
where was that?
That was the Fury versus Ngannou joint.
Yeah. So on that card, remember we're basically watching boxing all day, which is weird. Now we love boxing, and we love great events on top of that, but to have to commit to just sitting there watching boxing all day is a task.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if anyone is telling him to kind of on what the consumer is actually feeling from these long events. At this point, even if someone is whispering to his ear that these events are too long, he's probably not listening.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think he's listening. He got too much money to be listening to anybody, at least at this particular point. I don't know, man.
Yeah. So in the famous words of our friends over, it is what it is.
Yeah, man. That's why I'm like this. Well, this other one. Oh, I got to look up this other one though, because at least it looks like with that one, you don't really have that many fights on that card. Where you're gonna have Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, right? That's supposed to be another Riyadh season card, and as of right now, I only see like 6 fights on that card. Feel me? So,
yeah, quick question. Was last night's card over in California, was that the best card ever that's been kind of been going around?
No. That wasn't the best card ever, man. Like what are we doing here? I kind of like I was saying it earlier. With Turkey LLC, as far as like overall, some folks are claiming, oh, he's giving us the fights that
we want.
fans want to see.
The fights that we want.
We want the fights that we want, and we haven't had the fights that we want. And I said this earlier. I said, wait a minute, aren't we just coming off of the past couple of years where we've had a number of fights that we did want to see, and it didn't involve Turkey LLC? Yeah, I think so. So what are we doing here? So if you're talking about fights that we want to see, okay, let's put that to the test then. I said this earlier, I say this right now. Let's put this to the test then. If you want, to put on the fights that the fans want to see, go ahead and put on Canelo versus Benavidez. Not no Canelo versus Crawford. Put on Canelo versus Benavidez and let's see what's happening. You feel me?
And you know what's wild? Turkey paying these dudes all this money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you remember when Tank asked for those 2 Ferraris?
Yep.
So them 2 Ferraris is less than any of the money probably all these fighters is asking for. and that was just like, you know what I'm saying?
Speaking of cars, I want to talk about the other thing that was happening there during the Riyadh season card. That was crazy too. Back go where it says, "Hey, he's born and raised and will die in California," or I mean, at least he ain't in LA. To live and die in LA, right? I was like, "Yo," they were giving out calls. At the end of the joint, they were saying, "Hey, we gonna have 4 winners to have an all expenses paid trip over to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia." And I'm like, oh man,
that stadium did.
Yo, oh, you talking about at the end?
Oh, yeah,
when they announced it, yeah, there was like, I don't know if there was like 15 people in the stadium by the time they announced it, yo. Everybody was gone, like it was like crazy, yo. But like, I mean, it's more of like an event. It's like an event and a spectacle, a show. that's what this Riyadh season type thing is kind of like, because the actual Riyadh season is like a whole bunch of events that are happening. You got entertainment, you got music, you got dance, you got art, all that type of stuff that's going on. You feel me? And I think that's what they had here in reference to this particular event. As far as like tying in music or whatever it is. Also with this event. So I'd like to see like how things kind of worked out as far as like tickets were concerned, because I was bringing it up in the weeks leading into this bout for this fight card. I'm like, these tickets is pretty up there. They're pretty high. And after that, you had like a series of organizations like buying up tickets and trying to resell them, and it looked like they couldn't move them. And then what it was, like a weekly into the fight, you kind of like seeing some organizations or some companies kind of like saying, hey, 25% off tickets. And I know a couple people that were able to wait until the day of or the day before and got tickets for like maybe about $100 or so. You feel me? So it's like, yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean?
I have a question for both of you guys, right? Outside of any conspiracy theory, what is Turkey's reason for his foray into boxing? Is just because he can? The opportunity is there, or does he truly care about the sport, or is this something else?
Hey Tim, could you answer that question?
Wait, what happened? I wasn't listening. I was saying something.
Yeah. So one more time. So in regards to Turkey's interest in the boxing, during these big events, things like that, what is his true motive in doing these events? Does he care about the sport? Is there an ulterior motive, or is just because he can as an entrepreneur with the money to do things like that? What's his true motivation?
All of the above, right? He wants control, you know what I'm saying? But he's a guy you can't let have too much control. And an event like last night is kind of like the reason, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's prolonged. You're spending a lot of money, but the fight fans really don't care about that so much. You know what I'm saying? Like, even when the guy won the car, like, you didn't even see amusement on that guy's face. Like, you know what I'm saying? It looked like they knew that guy. They just picked him out the crowd because they knew him. You know what I'm saying? It's just like stuff like that. And then like the matchmaking, like if he's really a guy who's for the fans, then like you would be making some of the fights that we have really been calling for. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like that Canelo Benavidez fight. A couple of other ones. A couple of other big fights. So he could be, but it's tricky, man. I think there is an ulterior motive, though. I do. I think me.
Oh, you were like cutting out there a little bit. Yeah, there you go, Matt. I'm. He's able to do these events here for the past. It's been about what? It's coming up to 1 year. Here up to this particular point. Let me see here for sure when that first event was with that Fury versus Ngannou. That was October. So in October that'll be pretty much like 1 year. But it just looks like he's just putting out these events just to put out the events. Because some of these matchups is like maybe they look okay on paper for some of them, but others it's like what are we doing?
And even in that regard, was he the one that was throwing events in Dubai prior to these fights? Was he back behind that, or was that somebody else?
No, I think that was somebody else there.
I think that was a different Prince.
Okay.
Yeah. These fights aren't bad on paper. They're great fights on paper, and they like some of them come out to be great fights. In fact, there's too many overshadow each other. That's like I don't think people.
It looks like you're getting off in and out.
Can you hear me?
It's like you're cutting in and out, though.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
I mean, so maybe he probably witnessed the stuff that was happening in Dubai, right? He said, "Hey, mate, I can jump in that and probably do it better." So, I'm not sure if he had influence from seeing stuff that was going on in Dubai, because with the Dubai stuff, they were just trying to draw people to there to visit that place, as tourism to bring money into that site. So maybe he saw that, say, "Hey, I can do that and do it better." So I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, man. It's crazy how they have it, man. But I'll see how this goes, because the thing about it was, like, even before this event, we were talking about like how you had the undisputed title fight, and then you had the whole thing with the Queensberry versus Matchroom 5v5, and particularly with the undisputed heavyweight title fight that they may have lost like a potential $100+ million off of that. You feel me? So like I want to know like how the numbers kind of like worked out in this particular event, because one, I kind of like pointed it out earlier, the whole thing about Terence Crawford, like how much he may have got paid for just this event alone. And then you had the whole thing with the gate receipt. So, hey, I mean, we'll get the gate receipts. It's California, so they're definitely open when it comes to showing what the overall gate is. So we're gonna get those numbers. We're gonna get those numbers for that for sure. And then we gotta see like how they're gonna put out the reports here for the pay-per-view, which not these days we can't even get a accurate reading of pay-per-view buys anymore. So I'd like to see, like, okay, after all of this is said and done, if he looks at the numbers here for this particular event, how long is he going to keep doing this? You feel me? So there's that, man. You had like, what was it? Well, I went through those two other heavyweight fights. You also had Andy Cruz with the KO win over Antonio Moran. They're getting another KO, so it's like 2 KOs out of his 4 wins. David Morrell Jr. versus Roderick Kalajic. He ends up winning by unanimous decision there. He did get, 2 scores of 117-111 and 1 score of 118-110, but it looked like he had, a couple of moments there where he didn't look, all too hot. It's like being all, polished and everything like that. And that's one of those fights where the odds were like wide, like they were hugely in favor of David Morrell Jr. There, and they felt like it was going to be stoppage win within about 4 or 5 rounds. So overall, under was like about 4.5 for that particular fight, but it ended up still going the full 12 rounds. So man, I don't know if folks was able to try to get in on a decision. If it was like a decision that with the full 12, they probably would have raked in with some good money on that. But yeah, that's man, it was crazy though, man. That and I'd be interested to see what Coach Ronnie Shields says about this particular fight, but I don't know if he's going to be. Well, I don't know. Well, he might be back in his home area there on Tuesday. He has like another card to be preparing for. As on August 10th, you have a top-ranked fight card that's going to involve Vito Milnicki Jr. And that's over in New Mexico. So maybe he'll be back in Texas here, for the final preparations there or whatnot for Vito Milnicki Jr. before he goes out to New Mexico, I think, there for that fight card. But yeah, I'll be interested to hear what Coach Ronnie Shields has to say about his guy David Morrell Jr. in this performance against Kalajic.
And also on top of it, did they ever say why he moved up to 175? Because Morrell did have a belt at 168, right?
Yeah, I mean, similar to how David Benavidez had a belt at 168. So I guess he said, if he couldn't really get Benavidez or Canelo at 168, he just had this fight over here at 175, and so. But he's in a similar situation here at this point because they added the WBA regular title onto this particular fight. So now he's the WBA regular champion at 175. So it's almost like the same thing there that they had at 168. Now it's at 175. You got David Benavidez as the WBC interim champion, and you got David Morrell here as the WBA regular champion. So. Oh man, man, I don't know, man.
Yeah, and even in regards, so we know that Canelo got everything on lock at 168, minus the IBF, which they stripped of him. We know that.
Yeah.
But for me, back to Morrell, I don't see why he moved up to 175. I don't see a definitive reason there. I mean, in a sense, Benavidez Morrell. I mean, I want to see that. Not right now. I mean, I said let that cook for a while longer when there's. When there's more significant situation on the line. So I don't want to see that right now. And I don't think they should be, in a sense, forced to fight right now. It's not needed right now. So, I mean, I would definitely love to see Benavidez face the winner of B-Ball and
if it happens.
Yeah, I definitely want that's good line of sight for Benavidez, but Morrell, I'm not sure where he fits into the picture last night. And even though I didn't see that fight, that kind of sense, like, does he really belong in 175? Because the guy he fought, the guy we saw back in Tampa a while back, solid guy, everything, solid. I'll just leave it at that. But if Morrell didn't come in and dominate him, does he truly belong in 175?
Yeah, that's the thing about it. I mean, he got those rounds in. But it just seemed like he wasn't as polished, so to speak, like in comparison to what David Benavidez did against Alexander Gvozdyk. I kind of like see that as like, okay, if you put David Morrell Jr. in there against like some other fighters out there in the light heavyweight division, how would he fare against them? And that's the other thing too, is like who else are you going to put him up against there in the light heavyweight division? Like, I don't know, like what they could basically do with him at this point. I don't think they'll put him up there against Gvozdyk. Like have Gvozdyk have back-to-back fights. I see like maybe Ronald Gavril there, who's also now at light heavyweight, who was former opponent of David Benavidez at super middleweight. But yeah, outside of that, I don't see what else is out there for him.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess they'll figure it out, but hopefully will, like I said, Coach Shields be able to give some insight on that when you speak to him.
So yeah, we'll see. What he has there in store for him. In the near future. There. So yeah, I like to see what he says about that here. If he's able to get on the show here on Tuesday on the War Week boxing channel on YouTube there. So yeah, definitely looking to see what happens with that. But that that's mainly the card there. Hold up, tip was off and it got back on there. So yeah, that's basically.
I didn't know it took me off.
Yeah. So that's basically what you had on the card there in Los Angeles. We got the fight card that's coming up in Las Vegas, headlined by Vergil Ortiz Jr. there against Serhii Bohachuk for the WBC interim title at super welterweight. There's just too many titles.
I'll tell you this: if Vergil beats Bohachuk, I do not want to see Vergil Ortiz versus Terence Crawford next. There's only three prominent fights, maybe four, that I would like to see Terence Crawford in. And the same goes for Vergil, because if I'm looking at Vergil Ortiz, from him moving up from 140 to 154, it's been nothing but 40 pounders on his resume.
Mhm.
Nothing but 40 pounders on his resume. If I'm looking at Terence Crawford's resume, I'm seeing dudes who weren't of championship caliber, and that's the whole way through. I mean, or if it's not a guy who was of championship caliber, it's a guy who is basically on the back half of his career.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And in this case, with Madrimov, it was a guy who was just there too early. It's like when Canelo fought Floyd, it was just an early bout. You know what I'm saying? The guy wasn't experienced, and you can see it when he brought that amateur background into this fight. He didn't know how to win as a champion. So I do want to see Crawford versus maybe a Charlo. I wouldn't mind a Tony Harrison. Now now you can say Tony Harrison, people would be like they'll go into shock like Tony Harrison. The thing with Tony Harrison is like this is a guy, he's been in those type of fights. You know what I'm saying? I haven't seen Crawford against a guy who really knows how to work that jab. Now you could say Vergil, but Vergil had once again he hasn't been in those championship caliber fights. I've seen Tony Harrison win those type of fights. I've seen Harrison win a fight. You know what I'm saying? Like win about 9 rounds and then get knocked out late. You know what I'm saying? Surprisingly, you know. But I've seen Harrison bring that type of energy to those type of fights. Maybe a Tim Tszyu, maybe a Thurman. Thurman's similar to Madrimov. You know what I'm saying? He's more aggressive, championship caliber. Those are the type. Those are the type of fights I want to see Terence Crawford in. Give Vergil like the Fondoras, the Erickson Lubins. I want to see those type of match made fights.
Yeah.
Anything else for these guys, I feel like is tailor made and it's easy work for them.
Yeah, so I'd like to hear what Vergil Ortiz does against Serhii Bohachuk. That would be a good, definitely a good look there for him in this particular sense because Bohachuk has scored his good win over Brian Mendoza. He only has that lone loss on his record there. When he faced Brandon Adams there, where he had the late stoppage there in that one, but outside of that, he's been able to build up his record, up to this particular point. So it's going to be a good little scrap, for as long as it lasts. I want to see Vergil Ortiz, how he's able to develop more into, being able to have different elements there to, either overwhelm or, stop his opponent. So if he does get a stoppage win over Serhii Bohachuk in this one, then I want to see Vergil Ortiz in there with like the top guys out there at 154 pounds. The only thing with Vergil Ortiz is like who are you going to match him up there against there? So it would kind of like be a workable matchup. Like I don't see him like facing guys like a Erickson Lubin or Tim Tszyu or something like that. Well, maybe with Tim Tszyu because Tim Tszyu isn't like completely with like say Heyman boxing, right? So maybe they could have something like a Tim Tszyu versus Vergil Ortiz Jr. But like some of the other guys that you mentioned, like them being with PBC or something like that, then I'm not all too sure if that'll happen. But I want to see Vergil Ortiz in a real good fight. You know what I'm saying? Because up to this point, he's built up his record, but we haven't seen him in a world title level or high level type of a fight yet. So we got to see that here. You know what I mean? Also, hey, if we, I know this is like a long shot, but I still want to see it. Vergil Ortiz Jr., Jerome Boots Ennis. 154 pounds. Let's see if that could go ahead and happen. Because if y'all were calling for it at 147, why not at 154? That's my thing. You feel me?
And even as you mentioned Ennis, did you make anything of that brief interaction between him and Crawford at all?
I mean, Boots was talking about, saying they'd talk with Turkey LLC and seeing if they could make that fight with Terence Crawford. Nah, like he was out there, he was supporting Andy Cruz. He's Andy Cruz is part of the same camp out there at Coach Bosley Ennis over at the Dungeon in Philadelphia, and he was in there in attendance for the fight. But like Terence Crawford ain't really, he don't feel like there's enough of a motivation to fight Jerome Boots Ennis, But But I'll say this: if the whole thing with Canelo is out of the cards, and you don't necessarily have what is it? Like say a Jermell Charlo or a Sebastian Fundora, why not make that fight with Jerome Bosinnes? Especially if you're going to have the thing there with Fundora. Like if you are trying to enter things of negotiations with Sebastian Fundora, you don't think that more people would be interested in a fight between Terence Crawford and Boots Ennis than Terence Crawford versus Sebastian Fundora? So I would rather, I mean, as a fan, I would rather see Crawford versus Boots Ennis, you know. And I say, you know what? Why not have that fight? Let's have that fight, and then you could have, you know, as I mentioned earlier, Sebastian Fundora versus Jermell Charlo. Like, don't even have Canelo in your conversation. Stay there at 154 pounds and have a fight, whether it's against Boots Ennis, whether it's against Sebastian Fundora, whether it's we could probably come up with some other fight that they could have for Terence Crawford at 154 outside of, you know, him, you know, going up to 168 to fight Canelo Alvarez. But the main issue is with Terence Crawford, how much money are you paying Terence Crawford to go ahead and fight? We already know what's up with Canelo Alvarez and what he asked for a guarantee. But, you know, what is Terence Crawford asking for a guarantee? I had had reports that for this fight against Madrimov, it was $16 million. I'm like, $16 million to fight Israil Madrimov, who, as they say, they claim is the number one super welterweight when he only had that one fight where he won the vacant WBA super welterweight title in comparison to, like, say, a Sebastian Fundora who defeated Tim Tszyu, who, as I would kind of like say, is probably at the time the de facto number one guy at 154 since, you know, you had Jermell Charlo move up to 168, where we just had an example of a guy moving up 2 divisions to fight Canelo Alvarez at 168. And we all saw what happened right there last year, right? So you mean to tell me that y'all going to try to have this happen again with Terence Crawford?
Well, no. One thing too, think about this in terms of the prospects of Ennis and Crawford. How many times have we seen up and coming fighter or even an established fighter, and they want to go after the established champion and make that fight happen? How many times have we seen that? We saw that so many times when Mayweather was on top, everybody was chasing him and things like that, trying to get that fight. Only to be, I'm just an idea. So now we got Ennis been chasing Crawford for what, a good year or so now?
Right? Yeah, a good year or so, whatever it is. And he had been the IBF, mandatory challenger, number one, guy, right? But it's kind of like been around a year or so or whatever it is. But it's kind of been less than that because remember, Errol Spence was the IBF champion up until, July 29th, 2023. So, like, Boots was the number one contender regardless of, who the guy was or who the champion was. You know what I'm saying? But even before that, they were pursuing a fight with Terence Crawford. And Terence Crawford said, hey, my priority is having a fight with Errol Spence Jr. So after he had that fight with Errol Spence Jr., he was pretty much open. So you could have had that fight. Actually, I think that was kind of like another factor too, though, as far as like him being inactive for a whole year. I think that part of that kind of like goes into his overall, like how he approached the fight there against Israil Madrimov, because, I felt like, some of the shots that he was getting hit with, that's, part of timing and getting timing down and all that type of stuff and being sharp, you know what I'm saying? So, even though there's times where, Terence Crawford has it where he's not, completely, 100%, rating defensively, there's times where he could, like I said, gauge the distance fairly well and be out of range against his opponents. But in this fight against Madrimov, you had those instances where he was getting caught with those lead right hands and that type of stuff where, I think it was like a timing thing that he just couldn't really get down pat until late in the fight. But yeah, I feel like he could still face Jerome Boots Ennis at 154 pounds.
And yeah, consider this. So like you're a member of Crawford's camp, right? And you just sit there and you look at all this accomplishment that he has from 135 all the way up until now. And you say, and you guys have a meeting, and it said, do we need Ennis? What's the answer that goes around that table? I think each and everyone would say, we don't need him. And I don't want to hear no one say that Crawford's ducking Ennis. I don't want to hear that. I mean, that's now me personally, of course I want to see the fight. You said it, you want to see it, and so do I. I think most and every single boxing space on Twitter wants to see Crawford Ennis. We all do. But for Crawford, he's moved on to new business, as we said earlier, and simply he doesn't need Ennis. Now, of course, if Turkey makes the money right, like I said, he just got 60 million from last night to fight this guy last night, who's I don't want to say a virtual unknown, but in terms of the top tier boxers like that, he's a virtual unknown. So since Turkey is in the business of giving us fights that we would never get, okay, Crawford's like, okay, all right, so you gave me 60 million last night, all right, give me 30 to fight Ennis.
I don't know about 30, but maybe about 20. About 20.
Yeah.
If they say 20, then then I'd be like, why not go ahead and consider that fight? But the other factor too is, when is Terence Crawford gonna get back in the ring?
And also, Ennis Crawford, 47 or 54, where would it be at?
It's gonna be 54. It's gonna be 54. That's already been established.
But even still then, even at 54, Ennis does not have a belt, and Crawford's new mission is to unify at 154. So once again, why should I fight Ennis for what? For glory? I've got enough glory for that. I've already done enough in the sport of boxing. So if you ain't got no belt, I don't need you.
Let me look into something here. Because I don't know, man. I keep getting the spelling of this guy's name wrong. But Bakram Murtazaliev, right? He is, currently the the IBF super welterweight champion. He, just recently won that belt with a stoppage win over Jack Kolke, right? He's had a couple of 12-round bouts, but he's had a few 10-round bouts or whatever it is. But yeah, I'm not all too certain as to, who he's necessarily under. Maybe it looks like he's had fights under Golden Boy, but in that Koke fight, I'm not all too sure if he was out there. Like in his last bout before that, he was involved in a TGB Promotions bout. So maybe he's a free agent. I don't know. So hey, if you say, hey, you know what? If Terence Crawford is only interested in collecting belts there at 154, let's see if you could cut him off at the pass and try to get a fight there against Bakram Murtazaliev, because if you just had Terence Crawford there fighting Israil Madrimov, like, you think that people are going to be interested in Crawford fighting Murtazaliev next to try to get that belt as much as they were interested in this one? I'm not all too sure. So why not, say, hey, you know what? I'm really interested in fighting you at 154 pounds. And if I need to go ahead and get a belt, I'll do it. Hey, I'm already the IBF champion at welterweight. If I move up to 154 pounds, then, either if I have to have a fight, maybe I have to have a fight there at 154 first. But I'm like, I would go up to Bakram Murtazaliev and say, hey, I want that fight. Put it in Wells Fargo Center. That's my next fight there under Matchroom Boxing. And I'll win the IBF belt at 154. And then I'll say, hey, all right, Terence Crawford, now what? Now what's up?
Yeah, that wow. that would be a great way to force a fight with Crawford. I mean, because like I said, at this point, like we just said, Crawford really has no prospects of fighting Ennis and needing to fight Ennis. But with that strategy that you just outlined, it would be kind of unavoidable. And then on top of that, if Ennis was to come up to 54, get a belt,
you know what?
Say, hey, like I said,
I know my guy probably wouldn't be necessarily down with this, but you know, I would call my guy YSM up and I say, hey, whatever they have planned for Boots Ennis for November, because they say, you know, Eddie said that they want to try to get Boots Ennis back in the ring by November, right? I say, okay, have him, if he's intent on trying to get that fight with Terence Crawford, let's try to force the issue. Go after Bakram Zaliev and see if you can get that fight and see if you can get that win and become the IBF super welterweight champion, and then say, okay, what's up? What's up, Terence Crawford? So that would be the thing. If you don't have no belts, okay, that's one thing. But now he moves up and he gets that IBF super welterweight title, then what you gonna do, Terence Crawford? You saying you're trying to be undisputed at another weight class here at 154? Hey, Boots Ennis has this IBF belt. One way or another, you're gonna have to see him. So I'd say go that route. You feel me?
Yeah. I think he had that. On top of that, he definitely has to. His name gives him the leverage to even get that fight. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I like to see how that shapes itself out, man. I'll probably make a few phone calls here and there to say, you know what about this for Jarrell Boots Ennis' next fight, and see if they'll be interested in that, and see if they can make that happen. We'll see. But yeah, that's mainly what I got here. It's a little bit over two. Yeah, it's been 2.5 hours here. Definitely had a lot to cover here in this particular episode of the Boxing Source podcast. Big thanks for everyone that's listening live. Whether it's through YouTube or through Twitch or through Rumble here, and then also this has been pretty much like overdue. But for the first time, for after about over a year, we're finally caught up with the Boxing Source podcast in audio form. So whether it's Spotify, iTunes, whether it's Google Podcasts or whatever it is, all of the episodes of the Boxing Source podcast have been updated up to now. So once this particular podcast is done, we're gonna have it, once it's ready, we're gonna have it available in audio form for y'all to listen to on demand and all that type of stuff. So y'all can spread the word on that too as well. That they can't necessarily listen on YouTube or Rumble or Twitch. They can listen to it through iTunes or whatever their favorite podcast platform is. But we'll be right back at it here next week. I guess we're going to be assessing the Golden Boy fight card there. That'll be live on the zone, headlined by Vergil Ortiz Jr. versus Serhii Bohachuk there for that WBC interim super welterweight title. Big thanks for, of course, Brother Terrell here, the boxing academic, Tip Bayless, for joining in here live on this conversation. But y'all can go ahead and spread the word there for the Boxing Source, whether it's through these channels here like YouTube, as I said, YouTube, Twitch, and Rumble, or through the podcast there. You just spread the word on that, and also check out the boxingsource.net where we'll have articles there. Gotta work on adding a couple more articles there from the fights that happened over at the Entertainment and Sports Arena yesterday. So I'll be building more articles there for that. But with that being said, that's it here on my side for this August 4th, 2024 Boxing Source podcast. I'll check y'all later.